What is up everyone, it's David here. Welcome back to the Nerds of E-commerce, and in this video, let's talk more about Shopify SEO, especially how do we create a website structure that will attract more Google traffic to your Shopify store. Without further ado, let's go. Now this video is going to be broken into three parts. The first part is the importance of a website structure, what it looks like and how to design it yourself. Second thing is the different steps required to create a SEO friendly website structure so that you can get more traffic from Google to your Shopify store. And then the third part of this video is going to be a live demo for me to show you how you can execute a website structure in a prototype Shopify store. So website structure is important for two main reasons. One, you want your potential customers to find exactly what they want in the shortest amount of time possible, because the longer you leave it, the more likely they'll bounce out of your site and not end up buying anything. And the second main reason is that Google need to understand your pages so that they know exactly how to rank your pages and where to rank them. So this is what a sample web structure looks like. You have shipping policy, privacy policy, contact us. Basically pages that potential customers don't really visit that often. You don't want to spend that much time over here. You just want to update them whenever that's necessary, and there will always be just one click away from the homepage. Now on the collection pages side, blogs actually also belong here as well. And this is where we want to spend majority of our time creating and designing the web structure, because this area is where you're going to make majority of your organic revenue. And on top of that, this is where you help Google understand exactly, one, what your site is about, and two, what your collection pages is all about. In just a second, we'll go through a live example together in terms of how we can create a good website structure for Shopify SEO. But before we do that, let's just go through the steps required to designing a really good website structure. So I'm coming from the perspective of Shopify SEO. If we talk to a website designer or a user experience designer, the process will be somewhat different, but the purpose is the same. We want to make sure that the user or your potential customers can find what they're looking for as quickly as possible. And secondly, we want to make sure that Google understands what your site and what your pages is all about. Now, from my perspective, because we're focusing on Shopify SEO, everything starts off with keyword research. So Andrew has done a great video on that. So I'll put a link in the description box below. Now, once you've done all of that research, you can't possibly win on all of those keywords. So we have to prioritize in terms of knowing what we can win and rank on Google and what we can't. And the best thing to do after you prioritize it is to visualize it on a map so that you know how to execute it in the Shopify backend. And we'll go through that together as well later in the video. Now, the fourth and the fifth step is just execution. So I'll save that for when I show you a live demo. So the first step is keyword research. So let's start there and then go through the 5 steps together. So let's pretend that we are building a Japanese whiskey Shopify store. Japanese whiskey will be our main keyword. It looks like the keyword difficulty score is about 32. Now, usually anything below 45 is still very, very doable. When a keyword gets extremely difficult, upwards of 50, 60, it's going to take a long time to be even at the first page of Google. So I normally like to come back for those, and those are probably just not worth it. Now, if you remember in the steps to create a website structure, the second step is prioritize. Now, granted, this is a list of all the keywords that's Japanese whiskey and also what's related to Japanese whiskey. You want to ask yourself, what products do I sell that people are potentially searching for? Like, for example, let's pretend that my store sells Hibiki, Nikka, and Yamazaki. There's also a lot of other choices of keywords to pick from. Whenever there is the word best in front of something, it's usually looking for some kind of a blog article or a comparison. When it comes to Japanese single malt or whiskey brands, again, whiskey brands, they're just looking for a collection of whiskey brands, not really looking for a particular whiskey. Basically, they don't know what they want yet. Now, single malt, similar, it's probably someone looking for a gift, and there's not a lot of search volume, and the keyword difficulty is pretty high, so definitely not something that's worth chasing after. Now, Hibiki Suntory whiskey, this looks pretty good actually, but it's not as good as Hibiki whiskey because it has 2,000 searches per month and the keyword difficulty is 21, so we're going to keep this one instead of this one. And Hibiki Japanese whiskey, same scenario when it comes to search volume and keyword difficulty, so I think we're going to stick with these 4. So this is our main keyword, and these are the products that we sell, and these are still very, very doable except for Nikka. Nikka seems a little bit more difficult because there's a lot more competition for it, but Yamazaki definitely doable, Hibiki definitely doable. But the one thing I want to point out is that when it comes to keyword difficulty, take it with a grain of salt, because all of the tools that that we use, whether that's KW Finder, SEMrush, it's just an estimation. It doesn't mean that it's true, and it doesn't mean that there are 6,000 people searching for Japanese whiskey in a given month. Oh, and also make sure you change the country database to whatever country you're in, because the keyword difficulty can change depending on whether you are in Australia, in the US, or in other countries. So granted, we're going to use these 4 keywords. We're going to move on to the third step, which is visualizing it onto a chart. So normally what I like to do after I have my list of keywords is that I like to visualize it on draw.io. It doesn't really matter where you visualize it, but what I found is that if I draw it out, especially if I visualize it, it makes the execution part significantly easier. If you remember the keywords that we were looking for, we were looking at Japanese whiskey, which is the main keyword, Hibiki whiskey, Yamazaki, and also Nikka. There's a spelling difference because in Australia we spell whiskey without the E, and if you go to the US, they actually spell with an E. So if we quickly go back to KW Finder and search for the alternative, which is this spelling, it turns out that the keyword difficulty is actually lower with the same amount of search volume. Because we're mainly serving in Australia, let's use the Australian spelling. Now granted, these are the keywords that we want. We want to build them into a collection hub. Let me explain what I mean by that. Japanese whiskey is the main collection, and then within that Japanese whiskey you have Hibiki, Nikka, and also Yamazaki. Now when it comes to Shopify stores, you actually can't do the website name / Japanese whiskey / whatever the brand. That's just a natural limitation of Shopify. In my opinion, it's actually not a limitation at all. It actually makes SEO so much more easier to manage because everything has to go through collections. Now this graph doesn't do it justice when it comes to demonstrating the content hub, so let me show you a better example right here, which is what I have below. So Japanese whiskey is our main category, and what we want to do is we want to create this neighborhood of pages so that when Google lands on Japanese whiskey, they will also crawl Nikka, Hibiki, and Yamazaki. I'll show you how it's done on the Shopify backend in just a second, because this is essentially our secret sauce on how to get more traffic on Google really quickly. If you watch the best Shopify SEO app video, I demonstrated how authority is passed on between pages. So if the page rank for this Hibiki whiskey go up, that means it will be shared back to Japanese whiskey because it's linked together. Now, if this one goes up, then Japanese whiskey will also go up. Now, if Japanese whiskey also go up, that means it'll distribute excess authority to both Nikka and Yamazaki. What we're essentially doing here is that with this content hub, we're actually creating a loop. As one page rank upwards, the other page will benefit. And as the other page benefits, the other pages will also benefit. Now, once we've visualized this, the next step is to execute it on the back end of Shopify, which I'll show you right now. I just created a sample store, and the easiest way to execute this is once you've visualized it, you want to go to collections. I already created a prototype, so just to make the exercise a little easier. Now you want to first create your main category, which is Japanese whiskey in our case. And one of the first things you want to do is there's a description underneath the collection. So you want to write whatever the description is. And we're going to do a video later on in terms of explaining exactly what you need to put inside the collection to give that collection page a higher chance of rank on Google. But for now, just know that you put your description here, but towards the end of the description, you should also put what are some of the other collection pages that you want to link everything together. So for example, if we go back to our diagram, we want to link Japanese whiskey together with Hibiki, Yamazaki, and also Nikka. So if we go back to the store, now as you can see, we have brands of Nikka, Hibiki, and Yamazaki here. So the next thing to do is go back to collections, create another collection called Hibiki. And I want to quickly mention here that with the title, you want to make sure it's always the keyword that you've researched. Hibiki whiskey is the keyword that we want. So we always want to put that keyword that we want in the title. And we also want to make sure the URL is exactly that keyword with a hyphen in between as well. Don't use underscore because Google find it very hard to understand underscores. So just use hyphens. It's just much better. It's much more neater as well. Now, I don't need to say too much when it comes to page titles and description. You want to make sure that you write these page titles and descriptions yourself, because if you don't, what ends up happening is the description that you put on the collection page is going to be too long and it's going to get cut off and it's going to look very awful. Let's talk about internal linking. Now, once you created this Hibiki page, do a similar thing as you did with Japanese whiskey. You write your description and make sure at the very end, you use the word Japanese whiskey. And then what you want to do is you want to highlight that keyword, edit link, and then you want to link it back to the collection of Japanese whiskey. When you do that, what you're ultimately doing is you're creating this arrow back right here. And that's what we call an internal link. You do the same thing with Japanese whiskey to here, and you also do the same thing with Nikka whiskey and also Yamazaki whiskey. Now, once you have all of these pages created and executed, this is when you have your first official, you can call it content hub, you can call it SEO hub. This will be a neighborhood of content for Google to understand. And this becomes very, very powerful. As one page gets better, the other pages will also get better. And this just goes on and on and on. So this is usually how we create majority of our website structures in a very short video. Of course, there's a lot more research and thinking that goes behind it, but the principle is largely the same. Now, one more thing I wanted to mention when it comes to the Shopify backend is that personally, I don't like to open links ever on the same window. I like to open it on a new window. That's more of a user experience issue. I'm more of a believer that people want to open things in extra windows and not change what they're looking at. So I personally like to do that. Now, once you're done, just save and boom. You are officially done when it comes to creating your first content SEO hub. And that's essentially it for this video. I simplified a few things and make things a little bit more easier to understand. And depending on how big the e-commerce store is, there's gonna be a little bit more time required to do the research, the copywriting for the collection pages, and linking everything together. In our next video, Andrews is going to be doing a massive tutorial on how we turn a liquor store with $300,000 worth of revenue to $1.2 million in just a little bit over 12 months. So if you learned something new, make sure you gently smash that like button, subscribe to our channel, click onto the bell, so next time when we release more tutorials, you be the first one to know. And until next time, see you very soon.